Aloha and welcome to the Hoop Southbound Show. One of the first major weeks of college basketball this season is upon us, and we are so ready to talk about what is a power-packed week of MTEs and early season tournaments. Maddie, it's Feast Week. It also means it's Thanksgiving. What are you thankful to be watching this week in college basketball?
I'm thankful to be watching basketball, period, this week. We've seen a few good games so far, but there are so many MTEs to keep our eyes on. I'll definitely be watching the Maui tournament, Battle for Atlantis, and I have an auto reminder set for all other notifications when it comes to SEC basketball for the upcoming week because we have some good games to look forward to.
We have a ton of good games this week. And this week we are joined by the Beers and Bucket guys. We're running through what's going to be an awesome week of college hoops and tournament basketball here on the Hoop Southbound Show. Show Connor from Beers and Buckets, the show for degenerates who drink beer and watch college basketball. How are you doing today, Connor?
I'm good. I got my Hawaiian shirt. I got my beer in hand. Just had a nice brunch there right before hopping on. So pretty excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we appreciate you joining us in our ridiculously themed episode here. The graphics and everything worked really hard to make it as Hawaiian as possible, even though me and Maddie are in the Ozark Mountains and you're out there in Appalachian country.
I'm actually in Florida, so I'm a little tropical, but not too tropical at this time of the year. So
I see the Kentucky thing and I just go, oh, surely.
Yeah.
Kentucky.
I grew up a Kentucky fan in Florida, so like I had it coming for me like for football my entire life, but basketball season I made it known that I was a Kentucky fan for sure. So
that's a good way to work that. Well, Connor, we're actually going to start this week's episode out talking about your Cats. On Tuesday night, Champions Classic, my goodness, it was a great basketball game. Kansas ultimately beats Kentucky 89-84, but I don't think the result is the real takeaway from this game. I feel like what this game showed was just how talented Kentucky is as a team. They beat Kansas on the offensive glass without Bradshaw or Big Z. It took a career game from Harris and a massive night from Hunter Dickinson to pull out that win. Guys, what are your thoughts? And Connor, we'll start with you on that Champions Classic game for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, like it's exciting. I hate it being a Kentucky fan and having to do the moral victory thing. But when you are missing 21 feet of people, in your centers, like that's what you kind of have to do. But if you had told me, a week ago that you'd be having zero centers, your two arguably best players or two most important freshmen and DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards combined 1 of 18. You have Antonio Reeves shoot 4 for 17 or whatever it is from 3, and you still had a chance to win it late. I would take that 100%. Oh, not to mention that Harris, who has shot like 1 3 his entire life, made 5 of them consecutively, and then had what was it? Hunter Dickinson had 27-21.
He had a double-double by halftime.
Yeah, like if you had told me all of that, I would have told you it would end up like the Duke versus Kentucky game in 2018 in Champions Classic. But the fact that we had a 14-point lead in that game is insane. One thing that, again, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you can't start a game slow and finish a game slow or poorly, and that's exactly what Kentucky did. But getting those centers back, like I don't think DJ Wagner is going to have that, like the issues he'll have when he has a legitimate lob threat. Because right now, the defense is just selling out on him at the rim. So that's what's happening. And then Justin Edwards I think he'll get it going. He just, every year as Kentucky fans, we get used to this. Champions Classic, you have these 5-star freshmen, and one of them don't show up in this game. This happened to be DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards. But they look good. And, again, I hate the moral victory, but I do think that going forward, Kentucky's going to be a hard team to knock out. Just with the amount of depth that they have. Adu Thiero going for like 17 points or whatever. He had 16 points. There's guys that contributed that aren't going to get a lot of minutes later on, but they contributed now. So that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Maddie, before I jump in on this conversation, I want to hear your thoughts as well on this game.
Yeah, just going along with what Connor said, it was an excellent game. I think it really showed us what kind of Kentucky team we're going to be looking at. And as long as, they're able to put the pieces together, I think they're going to have an absolutely phenomenal season, better than, we kind of expected, especially earlier in the summer. A great game, but the Jayhawks, went on a run to kind of tie up the game. UK got the lead again, and then they tied it up. Kansas ended up tying it up again. So I think right there, my main concern is defensive consistency. But, like Connor said, missing all of your centers pretty much.
Yeah.
And, a couple of, off plays, they're going to come up if they need, if they're hot like they were, especially with Dickinson kind of leading the way there.
Yeah, I just want to throw out some just additional thoughts here. We talked about the big guys being missing, but like Kentucky was +7 on the offensive glass in this basketball game. Adut the Arrow playing with extreme athleticism out there, ripping down boards the best he can. Trey Mitchell also making a huge contribution. And then guard play, the backcourt looks so good now that we've seen it against better competition. They won the turnover battle +6, and they were +6 also in 3-point field goals made and +2 in steals. Truly, I mean, it was an impressive performance. And I know you don't want to take away moral victories in this game, but, just real fast, we'll just go around the horn here real fast. Your thoughts kind of on the potential now that you've seen Kentucky against a higher level opponent, like where their ceiling kind of is in the SEC this season. Connor, we'll go back to you on this real quick.
I mean, I'm always going to be biased with Kentucky, unfortunately, but thankfully I'm not like a journalist where I have to show unbiased like at all.
We're podcasters,
we did the SEC show for Kentucky or for Beers and Buckets, and I had Kentucky top 3. I think they're still in that conversation, along with Texas A&M and along with, I think I had Arkansas in there, and that nothing's changed for that either. We'll talk about that in a second, but Kentucky's right there. I mean, I think it's splitting hairs. I think they can win the SEC just with the amount of depth that they have. Last few years, one player goes out and then they're screwed. This year, Antonio Reeves goes out. Okay, well then you have 3 other shooters to fill in a spot in the starting lineup. It's getting back to the days of old for Cal, I think, and so they should be in contention right there for the SEC.
Yeah, I would agree. Maddie, your thoughts?
I mean, I think you could pick a number 1 through 4 and put Kentucky somewhere and make it make sense.
Yeah,
because we've talked about it time and time again with Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Kind of battling for the 1 to 3 spot, but I think Kentucky definitely showed us in this game that their name deserves to be in there too. So I think you put any lineup in that 1 through 4, and you can make it make sense.
So we talked about what I would call the good loss in this show. Let's talk about the real bad one that I got to witness live on Friday night. I've got my feet propped up there at the second deck at Bud Walton, and I leaned over to my friend Chris, and I told him before this, during the Old Dominion game too, I'm nervous about playing UNC Greensboro. That is a good basketball team, and Arkansas came out and shot incredibly poorly. Had a very bad night offensively, a bad night defensively. And sure enough, when you play a decent team on a bad night, they can beat you. It doesn't matter where you're playing at. And that's exactly what Greensboro did, beating the Hogs and Bud Walton 78-72. I know I can easily overreact to this game, but I also, there's more of these upsets happening across college basketball with mid-majors thanks to the transfer portal these days. Guys, how are you looking at this game? Connor, as the guest, we always start with the guests, get their insight and opinion first. So we'll start with you. How did you kind of take Arkansas's loss to UNC Greensboro?
So admittedly, I didn't watch it live. I watched it like the recording after, so I was able to skip through a couple, boggy possessions, things like that. But watching UNC Greensboro, it gave me the entire Evansville versus Kentucky in 2019 vibes. Like that's what it reminded me of. You have a team that Arkansas was extremely high, felt really good going into the season, obviously beating Purdue in the exhibition game. UNC Greensboro had nothing to lose and they played like it. So there you go. You know what I mean? But you look at UNC Greensboro's Ken Pompage, they're pretty good they take care of the ball. They don't turn over the ball a lot. They're really good around the rim. So this is going to be a good, litmus test for Arkansas. And I think they just slept through it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Again, Kentucky lost to UNC or to Evansville. 2019, and ended up winning the SEC by like 4 games that year. It's not out of like the season is far from over. And I saw like a lot of Arkansas fans on my timeline, like trying to, some were reacting, positively, some were reacting negatively. I mean, you're not going to be positive after a loss, but there's plenty to take away good. And so like, I wouldn't worry about this too much. The game was a fluky game for sure. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to see Arkansas shoot 17% from 3 for the rest of the season. They have too many good shooters, so.
Yeah, the 17% from 3 is also being modest on how that game actually went down. It was as low as 5% sitting there in the building late into the ball game. They started hitting some more and more wide open threes.
Yeah.
They were missing a lot of easy shots too, the ones that you would just totally expect to go down. Maddie, I know you watched this game. You were texting me and Bud like, what the heck is going on? What did you think about the game?
Yeah, so I mean, the amount of people that I had call and ask me what happened after this, final score came across their screen was unbelievable. And I said, if you listen to our podcast, you would have known. Like UNCG is a good team. I feel like in the first few games we found our rhythm from 3 this season, and when we couldn't get it going, it just kind of bit us in the butt. So the Hogs are going to have to figure out how to win without the 3 and produce more down low, which I feel like, obviously later in the game they started doing, and then finally started getting a few more 3-stuff falls. But we definitely can't slip on defense when you're having an off night from the 3-point range. So definitely something I think Muss will probably address definitely before going to Atlantis, as we'll talk about later. But, I think it was just off night on offense, off night on defense. Anybody can beat you when those 2 things are in effect.
Muss was already talking about this after the Old Dominion game too, about like their perimeter defense and the concerns he's had. And Greensboro took absolute advantage of that. Langley with 23 points, and then Brown Jones with 17 for Greensboro. Really rough night. Guys, I want to ask this real quick, and then we'll move on and talk about Alabama. For Arkansas, does this game in any way, Connor, I kind of got the vibe that your answer already in this, but does this change any of your perception of Arkansas? Or is it kind of the same way like Michigan State losing the JMU earlier in this season? Maybe Michigan State will be fine, but JMU is just a really good basketball team who got them on opening night. So just kind of the same mentality in your mind?
I mean, like it affects it a little bit. It's always going to rear its ugly head when you don't want it to. Most Selection Sundays, they're going to bring that
definitely
up.
On Selection Sunday, it's going to count. Yeah.
But the thing is, if they had shown consistently, in the first 3 games that they couldn't shoot the ball well, or if they couldn't defend, if they're not shooting the ball well, that'd be one thing. But this just seems a little bit flukier. So you got to see what's happening against Stanford. Obviously, like that's a good game to get right going into Duke, because I do think you guys could take down Duke. Duke is not that good this year. Despite returning one of the best freshmen of the year last year, I think they're very much beatable, as Arizona showed. And I think Arkansas has the makeup, the team that can do it. So you beat Duke, no one's remembering this UNC Greensboro loss. So I wouldn't worry about it too much again. And just make sure that if you aren't shooting, defense travels. Defense always doesn't care what the offense is doing. Defense has to do every time the same thing.
Yeah, and Arkansas has had one of the best defensive ratings in the SEC over the last several seasons. Maddie, any thoughts on this before we move on to Alabama?
Yeah, kind of what Connor said. I'm going to look at it as a fluke for right now. But if we start seeing more and more opponents kind of poke holes in, 3-point defense, or, anything that they found out in that UNCG game that Arkansas doesn't have going for them, then I'm going to be a little bit more concerned. But I don't think they're going to be able to continue to poke holes in our 3-point offense, but our defense is kind of what worried me there. And I think hopefully we'll get that right going into this next tournament.
Absolutely. All right. So team we got to talk about, we haven't actually talked about them much so far this season, but Alabama. Now, granted, they're playing some mid-majors, but they have been extremely, extremely hot offensively. 105 points against Morehead State, 102 points against Indiana State, 102 points against South Alabama, and then Mercer, for the first time this season, they did not break the century mark, only getting to 98, just barely missed out on the on hitting triple digits again. Now, of course, competition's going to get a little bit better now that they're in the Emerald Coast Classic when they play Ohio State, and then they got Clemson coming up in the ACC SEC Challenge. But How do you guys feel about Alabama starting the season so hot offensively? What are kind of your thoughts on the Tide here in the early going?
They're always, to me, regular season merchants, and Alabama, like, I just never cared for this Alabama team as much as I like Nate Oates when he's at Buffalo. Never cared for him since he's been at Alabama because it is always, I'm tired of the narrative like they're so modern basketball and they only shoot threes and only twos at the rim, that nothing else. And it's like, that's cool, but what happens in the tournament when that doesn't work? Because it hasn't worked for them in the tournament. So I mean, starting off the season, yeah, they're incredibly hot, but again, they've played Morehead State, Indiana State, South Alabama, and Mercer. Like, I'm not taking away too much from this. I'm going to hold on them. I think I have them finishing 4th or 5th, maybe in the SEC. Probably, I think around 4, which seems about right because I don't think that they have the front court to match up with some of the other teams. And then, like, looking at that Clemson game, PJ Hall is going to feast on them. And Clemson is a very good defensive team this year. So that'll be a good litmus test for them for sure. Because 2 games after that, they have Purdue. And I think Purdue is going to give them a really tough game. So, yeah, Alabama, like, again, Nate Oates, like, respect him. But at the same time, I just can't get behind this brand of basketball where they just think that they're so modern when it's really like what a lot of people are doing. So.
I can understand that take. Maddie, your thoughts on especially the fact that Alabama is sitting right now with the best offensive rating in the SEC at 142.2. Any thoughts on Alabama's offense and what your thoughts are on the Tide?
Yeah, I mean, off to an excellent start. Obviously, they just had their first game where they scored under 100 points by 2, like you said, only 98. But, you know, kind of like Connor said, I'll be more excited when they start playing a little more difficult opponents. I mean, the 3 of us could go out and play against my nieces and nephews and obviously have like 100 to 10, but you know, it's one of those things. Like, obviously we don't look down on mid-majors here. We're mid-major fans, but some of them, that defensive, like, let's go back and look at the defensive rating of those teams that they played versus Alabama's offensive rating. There's going to be some room for adjustment there.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, before the swarm of Tide fans hits this podcast in the comment section on YouTube or in the feedback section of Spotify, let's just go ahead and start looking at some some early season tournaments here. All right, so coming into week 2, or coming out of week 2, I should say, we are still waiting for one more result for our totals. I am currently sitting at I just had it 8-5, which my Arkansas Greensboro pick did not hit, obviously, as we talked about. So I'm sitting at 8-4 is where I'm sitting at so far. And then Maddie, you are at 7-5. You've had your bounce back week for sure.
You don't want to read my notes, David?
What do you mean your notes? Like your heroin?
I think Maddie is at not good, but improved this week.
Yeah, I was. Yes, you're at not good, but improved this week because week 1 was very, very rough. All right. So, and our guests are currently since Dave pretty much picked chalk with us. Our guests are currently at 4-2 is where our guests are at. And we're also waiting for the results for the MTE there in the Bahamas with Georgia for the final point. And we'll come to that later. All right. So rule change for this week. For MTEs and these early season tournaments and our record, this is how I've placed it just to kind of work it. You get 1 win if you predict the school's place plus or minus a spot. You get a loss if it's by more than that. 2 points if you're dead on, and you get 3 points if you predict them the champs and they do end up being the champs. I think that's a pretty fair path. I think that's a fun way to calculate that. All right.
Yeah.
So we start out with Tennessee making its trip to Hawaii to play in the Maui Invitational. As always, our thoughts and prayers are out with the folks in Maui and the wildfires as they recover out there. But this season, Maui is being held in Honolulu, and this field is absolutely stacked with some of the best teams in the country. If you're looking for good basketball, you definitely come to the right place. This is what the field looks like. On the bracket, you've got Tennessee taking on Syracuse in game 1. You got Purdue taking on Gonzaga. Then on the other side of the bracket, you've got Kansas playing Chaminade, UCLA and Shaka Smart UCLA playing Shaka Smart and Marquette. Guys, there's the AP Top 25 isn't out for this week, but you know how many teams are in this field that are in the AP Top 25. Also, how many teams are in the top 20 in KenPom extremely stacked. What are you guys' thoughts on this field here in Maui, and how excited are you for this tournament? Connor, as always, we'll start with the guest.
I feel sorry for Chaminade, but at the same time, they just got a free trip to Hawaii, so I wouldn't complain too much if I were them. But they are probably the first out in that field there. And I mean, this is exciting ball. There's a lot of teams in this bracket that probably are some people's Final Four. So this is going to be a fun tournament to watch for sure. I don't trust Tennessee in it. I'll tell you that right now.
I know you don't trust Tennessee in it because you do not like Rick Barnes. So.
No, well, I mean, it's not March, so he might actually win this tournament. But yeah. So we'll see on that. Do you want me to go ahead and give my prediction on where I think Tennessee lands, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, well, we're just going to move on here just a little bit. Just some general thoughts on the field, and
gotcha. Yeah,
really stands out to you.
Yeah, no, I think the matchups are pretty good for round one. I like that for the most part. Purdue and Gonzaga is going to be closer than I think people are going to give Gonzaga credit for. And Kansas obviously going to do Kansas things. UCLA Marquette should be a fun one as well. UCLA is getting like slowly but surely like trickling in. All their international prospects are getting cleared. Hopefully Big Z gets cleared soon because that's what they're doing. So, Ade Mara is really good ball player, really fun to watch. He's going to be really fun next year in the league. But that should be a fun matchup against Marquette there, and Tyler Kolek and Shaka Smart for sure.
Absolutely. Connor, I'm going to give you a break on this next question and get you a sip of your beer there and get your voice back up. So I'll ask Maddie first. Maddie, who's your biggest sleeper in this field and why? And I swear, if you say the team that I see you have in your notes, I'm going to rip my hair out. But go ahead. What? Who's your sleeper, Maddie?
What? My sleeper is going to be Marquette, and I don't know why you're mad at me. Because as an average basketball fan, I feel like you look at this field and you just see ranked team on ranked team on ranked team. So automatically they're going to go, I didn't want to say Chaminade. Chaminade's there.
They're not.
I would have been more mad if I picked Chaminade.
I would have really questioned your belief system at that moment, but yeah, go ahead, explain Marquette.
So I'm going to go Marquette because everyone's going to obviously look at these high ranked teams, say that they have, absolutely no chance of winning this. But the Eagles have had a solid start to the year against some decent high-ranking mid-majors and a win over ranked Illinois. So, I mean, I feel like the underdogs kind of in this are going to be Marquette and UCLA, but just because they don't have a current AP rank out beside their name.
Okay, I'll dig it. All right, Connor, who do you have as your team that's kind of the one that most people are probably sleeping on to win this field?
Most to sleep on, I'd say Gonzaga. I just think the way that they match up in this, because I do think that they could take down Purdue. I think Gonzaga has a more experienced backcourt there, and they're going to have to run into Kansas eventually at some point. But if you already took down Zach Edey, I think you could take down Hunter Dickinson. Getting past Tennessee is going to be a tough out for them, but I do think that Graham Ike is probably going to be the best big man in that matchup. And I do trust Nolan Hickman and Roose Bolton there to get it, receiver Bolton there to get it done. So I have Gonzaga as a sleeper, but Marquette was right there for me too. Because Kolek, like I said, really good. Cam Jones, really good.
I'm just flat out picking on Maddie. That is one of my favorite things to do throughout the week. If I can't get her mad. The Marquette pick is actually really solid. I do like that because I think also, and I think both your picks are right. What I was thinking, Connor, I believe with you, I was going Gonzaga because I don't think Gonzaga has the hype they normally have this year.
They don't.
Yeah, a lot of people when they look at this field are going, "Wow, it's kind of weird to think about," but yeah, Gonzaga is not one of the obvious favorites in this tournament this season. So I'm with you there. So as far as who you guys think might be your favorite in this tournament, I have mine. But who do you guys think ultimately comes out of winning this, win this invitational? And then we'll look at it from Tennessee's perspective. Connor, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I like Purdue to win it outright. I know I just kind of went against that, but I do think it's either one of those two teams will win it. Purdue, they have returned pretty much their entire roster from last season. They have the reigning national player of the year. I think he's the best big man in the nation, and that's going to carry a lot of weight in basketball games like this. So, I think what Purdue and Tennessee matched up or no, it was Arkansas. Who did Tennessee play in Michigan State? And that gave a lot in the exhibition. That gave a lot of like juice to Tennessee fans, which like I would have been excited too, but then you saw Michigan State go to lose James Madison. So I don't trust this Tennessee team as much. Regular season, I think they'll be great, but again, come tournament time, we'll see what happens. This tournament, I do think that it would be a good matchup with Purdue, but Purdue ultimately edges out. And I think Zach Edey versus Hunter Dickinson would be, electric to watch. And I do think that Zach Edey is the better big man overall. Hunter Dickinson does some things better, but Zach Edey is just the better big man.
Maddie, I'll let you go real quick because I know you're kind of thinking the same thing.
I was going to say, Connor took the words right out of my mouth. I've got Purdue here. I think we see an Edey versus Dickinson matchup. I think Edey wins the battle. After watching that Kentucky-Kansas highlights, Dickinson's not going to be able to bully his way around Edey the way that did some of those Kentucky players. So,
yeah.
Yeah, he is a Canadian giant, and he's not afraid to push you around in the paint for sure. And I think Hunter Dickinson's going to get a little bit of taste of that if that should be the matchup. My favorite here, though, is Kansas. I personally, I do like the way that Kansas is built. I think in that Kentucky game, if you're trying to go off the Kentucky game in the way that you look at Kansas right now, Kansas played Kentucky's game in that first half. In the second half, they started playing Kansas ball.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference. So don't take away on what was a really great game plan by John Calipari to speed that game up and play it with athleticism to the way of brand of basketball that Kansas is going to play. Kansas basketball was that second half. So I've got Kansas as my favorite to win this thing. They've also got the easier side of the bracket, in my opinion. So I'm like Kansas ultimately as the team. Just depends on that final matchup. That's if it's not Purdue's got a really good chance to win this. If it's someone else, we'll see. All right, so let's take a look at it from the Tennessee side. Guys, when you look at Syracuse in year one without Boeheim, what are your thoughts on this team? And does Tennessee get a W against the Orange? Real quick thoughts, Connor. What are you thinking?
Man, Syracuse almost just lost to Colgate by like 24 points or something like that. They need an incredible comeback. I admittedly thought Syracuse would be better, not because of Red Autry, but because I like Judah Mintz and JJ Starling. Those two players are really good, but they're not good enough to make Syracuse good as a whole. So I think Tennessee's just more experienced. They're a better team. They're going to pick apart Syracuse and do whatever they want. So not too concerned about that matchup for the Volunteers.
Yeah, I do like Judah Mintz. I'm with you, but I don't think there's enough overall talent for Syracuse to upset the Vols in this one. And especially if the Vols can get Santiago Vescovi going at some point this season, that would also be an additional help their offense. Maddie, any thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, basically what you said, David. My thoughts here were going to be if the Vols are playing as well as they are, basically without Vescovi, and if he turns it on in this game, there's no chance for Syracuse to take a win here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So game 2, we're looking at possibility even playing Purdue or Gonzaga. We've talked plenty about both these teams at this point. Which matchup do you guys like better for Tennessee? Do you like their matchup against Gonzaga or do you like their matchup against Purdue? Connor, we'll start with you.
I'd say Gonzaga purely because they don't have to go up against Zach Edey, because that would it's going to be very tough very tough for them. Dalton Connect can kind of do what he wants, so I'm not too worried about him scoring. But I will say I think Gonzaga's offense is, they're pretty freaking good. They're number 3 in adjusted efficiency, so that would be a good strength on strength matchup because I do think Tennessee's defense is their best aspect. So that would be a fun matchup, and I think that they can edge out Gonzaga's offense because again, it's early season. A lot of these stats are inflated. Gonzaga's played Eastern Oregon, who's an NAIA school, and Yale or something like that. So not a lot of tests going on against them there. So yeah, I think it should be Gonzaga there. But I mean, again, we don't know what this Gonzaga team can do. So we'll see.
Yeah, if it was Gonzaga, you're talking about a fun backcourt matchup between those two backcourts in the Tennessee. You were just talking about how much you liked Gonzaga's backcourt. So
yeah, Nembhard and Hickman are pretty freaking fun. And then Anton Watson, he's the Kentucky killer, so I have to give him respect there because he's done that a couple times to us now. But yeah,
gotta give respect where respect is due. Maddie,
absolutely.
Who do you think is the better matchup for the Volunteers?
I think if Gonzaga comes out with a win against Purdue, that's definitely going to be best case scenario there for Tennessee. Mainly just because I feel like Gonzaga's style of play is going to match up better with Tennessee. They're going to be able to defend it a lot better than they would up against Purdue.
Fair enough. All right. So like I have my own opinions on this. I'm going to make it chalk though on Gonzaga would be the better matchup for the Volunteers in this game. It's no offense to Tennessee's front court, but I do not like the matchup of a Dew versus a Edey in this scenario. You have to beat him with athleticism at that point. I think a Dew might be capable of that, but we've also heard Matt Painter talk about the intention and the learning curve that they got in that exhibition game with Arkansas about delivering the ball from the backcourt to the front court to Zach Edey and how much more deliberate they have to be in delivering that basketball. So I think that's something they've definitely focused on. So I would be leaning Gonzaga in a backcourt versus backcourt matchup there. All right. Then in game 3, who do you think Tennessee would be facing on the other side of the bracket? Now, obviously, that might reveal your prediction a little bit on where Tennessee plays, but where do you think so I'll go ahead and ask that question, actually. Where do you guys have Tennessee finishing up in Maui? Where do they finish this tournament at?
Oh, that's tough. Go ahead, Maddie. I got to think on it.
It's a tough field. It's a really tough field. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if they get that Gonzaga matchup, they could go all the way second place. If they get Purdue, I'm thinking maybe third or fourth.
Yeah, I'm asking also for your pick. This is your pick too. So this is what we're writing down for next week's episode on the records.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Tennessee probably finishing, fourth, maybe fifth. It just depends on like what Tennessee shows up. But I'd say probably fourth because I do think the field is just not in their favor, having to either face Purdue or then have to go and face Hunter Dickinson or Tyler Kolek or something like that. Like those are 3 top 10 players in the league right now. So that it's just not favorable for them. Even though Tennessee is a top like a top 25 defense, that's still really tough for them. So I say probably I'll just keep them on the winning side of the bracket, have them finishing fourth.
Fourth would be respectable in this field. Absolutely respectable. All right, Maddie, give me that position and then I'll give my thoughts.
I'm going to go fourth as well. Third was more of a ceiling kind of thing for me. No offense to Tennessee fans, but I'm thinking fourth here.
Okay, so when I fill up my bracket, I've got Tennessee facing Marquette in the third place game. So Marquette and Shaka Smart are obviously a really good team in the Big East this season. Cam Jones, absolute baller for the Eagles. He can shoot from 3. He can put up points in a hurry. He's from Memphis. I think this is also a game that if that was the potential matchup, showing out against your home state is always something that you want to do. But I've got Tennessee ultimately finishing this thing in third is what I've got. So we're going third, fourth is how we're rocking this one. That's going to be an incredible tournament in Maui. Obviously, the big focus of this episode. So we'll go ahead and move on to Arkansas and Atlantis. Maddie, I need a break if you want to lead the conversation on this one.
Yeah, so obviously Arkansas heading down for battle for Atlantis. This has become a huge opportunity for Arkansas to get themselves back on the right track after their loss to UNC Greensboro, as we talked earlier. Some solid opportunities to definitely start kind of the rebuild of the resume to get people to forget about that UNC Greensboro game. So when you guys take a look at the bracket, what is kind of jumping out to you? What do you like here?
Connor, I can go first if you need a breather also on this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So when I look at the field in this one, my biggest thing was that the bracket's kind of tilted to about 2 teams. Now, I think North Carolina has probably the best path. Now, UNI is a good basketball team. That's a really good mid-major program out of the Missouri Valley, one that should finish top 3 in their conference and might be one we'll see come Selection Sunday that gets 2 bids. We'll have to see. But that's a really good conference, and UNI is a good team. I like North Carolina on that northern part of the bracket there. And then the southern part, it kind of feels like Arkansas was picked to be the 2 seed with a really tough matchup in game 2 against Michigan or Memphis. So like that's kind of when I look at the bracket, what I'm feeling here overall is how it was kind of structured with a little bit of I'm not going to say they did it intentionally or anything like that, because I don't know how they set this bracket up, but there's a path for both these teams to go deep into this tournament.
Yeah, you and I actually, we talked about them on Beers and Buckets the other day because they play USF today. I picked USF to win, but this is not like you and I are sure. I think they're a good team. USF just has a new coach and they're playing inspired ball, right? But I I'm not sold on UNC this year. I've never been a Armando Bacot believer. So I do think that they could be an early out in this bracket. Really, to me, you go down the list, UNC and they could get upset. They definitely were on upset alert against Radford earlier in the season. UNI, I mean, they are mid-major. They're the underdogs in this. Villanova got upset by Penn. Texas Tech, they haven't lost, but they had some close games so far this season. And they probably, they projected a loss according to Ken Palm to lose to Villanova on Ken Palm. Michigan got upset earlier this week. Memphis hasn't been upset. They look like the favorites to me in this tournament. Arkansas upset. Stanford got upset by Santa Clara. A lot of these teams have a lot of question marks around them. The team to me that sticks out the most is really Memphis. They've looked really good so far this season. They were down 14 points to Mizzou and then came back and won by 15. So a big swing there for them, and that was without Penny. So yeah, I do think that this bracket, this battle for Atlantis, it favors the Tigers here, unfortunately, because I've never been a big Memphis fan.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be wild. If you get that opportunity for an Arkansas versus Memphis game, that'll be probably the best game of the tournament, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that one's going to have a lot of potential because you're talking about two teams coming into the season with very high expectations. And you're right. Tigers didn't have Penny, and David Jones is a really good basketball player at 15.7 points per game. And then also Jawan Quinterly, he's passing the ball well. He's playing good defense right now for the Tigers. Saw them go into Mizzou Arena and just rip apart Mizzou in that second half. In a game that they were down by quite a few points. So it's a great performance by Memphis. So I'm excited if we get that Arkansas-Memphis matchup, what kind of game that can turn into. For sure.
And even in the first round, I mean, you have Michigan playing Memphis. Michigan, if you had told me Thursday that they were going to be playing, I was like, wow, these two teams are playing really good ball so far early in the season. That loss to Long Beach State kind of hurt Michigan a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, they're still the 17th ranked offense, and according to Ken Palm, they're 14th in effective field goal percentage. They're playing really good ball too. So that first round matchup, Michigan versus Memphis, is going to be really, really fun and one to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love watching Memphis basketball because they're just fun to watch as the good team. Maddie's a big Memphis fan, so I know she's thrilled about this right now.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a hard game for me to watch if we have that Arkansas-Memphis matchup. Obviously going to be pulling for the Hogs, but I'm going to love watching that game regardless of the outcome. But so I think I know the answer here. Game 2, Arkansas, we've already mentioned, is going to face either Memphis or Michigan. Which matchup looks better for the Hogs at this point?
Yeah, that's tough. I think Michigan would probably be the better matchup just because I think Memphis, I mean, we saw you have an example or a small sample size of what they could do against the SEC opponent who finished 4th in the SEC last year. Obviously missing Kobe Brown, so that makes a huge difference for Mizzou there. But Michigan, I think, would be a better matchup. They're a lower ranked team on Ken Palm. They do struggle to defend the 3-point shot a little bit, and that's good if you're Arkansas. They also allow a lot of offensive rebounds, so a lot of second chance possessions there for Arkansas. So I would, if you're watching that game and wanting the Hogs to win the battle for Atlantis, you need to be pulling for the maize and blue there.
Well, I'm going to tell you what Arkansas fans are going to do versus what who they're actually going to should be cheering for. If you think Michigan should be the team, Arkansas fans are cheering for that Memphis game like crazy. They want it, especially the folks out eastern part of the state. They want to face Memphis. But I do agree with Connor. Michigan's the better matchup here for the Razorbacks. Another thing, he touched on the defense. Michigan's defense is over 100 points in their defensive rating right now. It's like up to 103, and that loss to Long Beach State is not a good one to take. That one's going to be real rough. Both Arkansas and Michigan, teams with some level of expectation that they fell short of on this previous week. I'm definitely thinking that Arkansas would be able to out offense, which is really weird to be saying over what last season was. But I think Arkansas would be able to outscore and outplay Michigan on the offensive end if they got the Wolverines. So yeah, that to me is the better matchup. The one everybody in the state of Arkansas wants is Memphis.
As a basketball enjoyer, I want Memphis and Arkansas to play. So if I'm an honorary Arkansas player or fan this week, then I'm pulling for Michigan to win that, because I do think that's the more winnable matchup for sure.
Yeah. Well, for people in Eastern Arkansas, which I know you're not from here, they love to play Memphis, and they've been begging for it for a while. And the folks over on the Jonesboro portion of the state want that to happen more than they probably want a winning football program right now. So, like, it's pretty crazy. Maddie, go ahead.
Just to keep it rolling, I'm going to say Michigan as well. Obviously, we've seen Memphis play two SEC schools with a long list ahead of them. And we've talked about it. Memphis is a fantastic basketball team, and I think that Muss and the boys would definitely much rather see Michigan. It's going to be an easier matchup for them.
All right, go ahead. Let's talk about game 3.
So let's take a look at the other side of the bracket. Arkansas is either going to face Northern Iowa, Texas Tech, Villanova, or North Carolina when it comes to game 3. So, guys, who is your favorite on that side of the bracket? Who's the team most likely in the last place game?
Oof.
Yeah. I have Texas Tech matching up with Arkansas in that game there, getting to it. Texas Tech is the 6th ranked defense. Obviously they played some cupcakes, and I get that, but I don't trust Villanova right now. A lot of Villanova fans don't trust Villanova. UNC, like I said, I think they're just really overrated to start the season. And then UNI, I mean, they were overrated to start last season too.
Absolutely, they
so,
were.
Like, how many times we got to teach you this lesson, old man? Like, right? But no, and then UNI, I think UNI is a fine team. I don't think they're beat UNC or Villanova or Texas Tech or whoever they have to match up in that second game. So I do trust Texas Tech here, because Grant McCaslin's a good coach. It was a great hire for them after a weird up and down year with Chris Beard and Mark Adams. So I think it would be a fun matchup as well. Two teams with recent success in the tournament for the past few years. That would be really fun for the SEC and Big 12 matchup that we probably would have had this season had we had a SEC Big 12 challenge this year. So give me the Red Raiders there in that game, all to match up with Arkansas.
Okay. I've got Arkansas matching up actually with Villanova should they lose that Memphis game. If they were to lose against Memphis, I think Villanova would be the other number 2 team from that side of the bracket, and they'd be in the 3rd place game with them. But there's always the potential they could face with North Carolina too as well. Like, I'm with Connor. Like, North Carolina is a team that comes in with a lot of hype, but they've also got a ton of questions to answer still. After last season, it's kind of like what I was saying back in May with Kentucky. I'm not giving anybody the benefit of the doubt just because you're ranked high coming into preseason polls right now. Now, granted, I think Baycott's a pretty decent player, and he's one of the better big men in the country. But at the exact same time, how much do you trust Davis? And how much do you actually trust North Carolina? So those are kind of my concerns there, for sure. So North Carolina could win this thing. They could also finish 3rd or 4th. So like there's a lot of places it could finish out. I do think the best matchup for Arkansas on this other side would be, for the sake of their net, and they need it, would be to face Villanova or North Carolina in one of those games, because they need some help after that UNC Greensboro. The season's not over for Hog fans, but you need something to start getting that bad taste out of your mouth after that game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see a North Carolina Arkansas matchup here. I'm gonna jump on the train as a believer. I think Connor kind of talked about UNI as a decent school. Texas Tech obviously playing good ball, but they've faced some cupcakes, so may not be ready for that level of competition yet. And Villanova, I don't think they're hyped quite living up to the hype yet. So I think we see North Carolina and Arkansas there. But last place, I'm gonna go UNI.
Be a rough one for UNI. I think they're going to upset somebody. I think they're going to get somebody in that tournament, but we'll see.
I think they could take down Stanford.
I think they could too. I think they could. I think they can take down Stanford. It could definitely happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have Arkansas finishing like 3rd there. I think last place. Yeah, I'm with Maddie. UNI is probably where they end up finishing.
Okay. All right, so Connor already answered it, but David, where do you see Arkansas finishing in the tournament, and how do you see this one playing out?
All right, woo pig. I'm gonna go ahead and say something stupid because I'm ahead in our game right now, so I could say something stupid. I'm picking Arkansas to finish 2nd. Not really that stupid. I got Arkansas finishing 2nd. They make it to the championship game. And I think North Carolina's bigs are just a little tough because Arkansas still got some questions to answer at the 5 spot right now, especially with Graham being in and out with injury right now for the Razorbacks. So we got to figure if Graham's in, we'll see. But given the circumstances right now, I could see Baycott having a pretty big game against Arkansas if that would be the championship game. So I'm going to go second for the Hogs.
I'm going to go first for Arkansas.
God, here we go. Big time move.
A lot of win. Mainly because the way that North Carolina has been playing, and I expect them to be in the competition for that first place game. I don't think multiple team events is going to be up their alley yet. I think they're going to be exhausted by the time it comes around, especially when it comes to the big. So, if Muss broke out the weighted vest and bricks practice after UNCG, I think the Hogs are going to be ready for that.
All right, we'll see what happens there. You know what? You're down a few points. I can see why you're wanting to take a big swing right now. All right.
I'm a believer, David.
Yeah, I'm going to be cheering for you to be right. So, all right. So Texas A&M heading to Kissimmee, Florida for the ESPN Events Invitational. This is our last.
I got to interrupt. How'd you pronounce it?
Is it Kissimmee? That was Kissimmee.
Kissimmee.
I'm up from Florida, everybody. It's Orlando.
I lived in Orlando, so like I never heard it that way. So that was like
German language. I tell people this all the time. The reason I mispronounce words is that I read all of it. And
I'm with you, dude. I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, you're welcome to give me a hard time. You're welcome to give me a hard. You know how many times I've mispronounced something on this show? Trust me, plenty.
Same here, man. Same here. Especially names. Oh my God. I can't do the names. I'm terrible with names.
You should have seen him in our front court versus back court top 5s, Connor. It was awful.
Connor, so one more time, Connor, how do you correctly pronounce this suburb of Orlando?
Kissimmee.
Kissimmee.
Yeah.
Kissimmee. Okay. Kissimmee, Florida, at the ESPN Worldwide Events Center there. Decent field. Really, when you look at this thing overall to wrap up Feast Week, other than Texas A&M here, who do you think is the team to pay attention to in this field, guys? Connor, we'll start with you.
I'm kind of torn between either Iowa State or Boise State. I think both of these teams are really good. I'm probably going to lean Iowa State just for the unfortunate it's not mid-major erasure, but as the power conference team there, I do think Iowa State's probably going to be one of the better teams in this field. So, but Boise State projected them to win today, so we'll see. But I think that they're a pretty good team too.
Yep, I also have Boise State having a pretty good game today as well. So we're definitely going to see how that goes down. Maddie, who's the team other than Texas A&M that you're keeping an eye out for?
I think in this opener, they're going to have a rough time with Penn State.
Really? That is a heck of a take.
Yeah.
That is a heck of a take.
She's going for the fences, though. I respect it.
I didn't say they're going to lose, but I think Penn State's going to be a good matchup for them. I think someone that people aren't really watching for, but I think their style of play is going to give the Aggies a little bit of difficulty here.
I do like Ace Baldwin. I do like Ace Baldwin for Penn State. I think he's a solid player for them. I don't think he's a Wade Taylor, but I do like him. So
I will watch with intrigue now that you've said that, Maddie, just for the sake of it. I'm interested, but I'm with Connor on that. There's a couple of guys who can play basketball in Penn State, but not a team that I'm really threatened by at all. Given how much they've lost and how much they've had to rebuild this team this season. Definitely.
I would not have had that take at all if I wasn't helping with the graphics and caught a few of their highlights. I was like, this is going to be more interesting than I thought it was.
Okay, I'll take it. I will take you on your research. All right, so now that we've got that, I got Florida Atlantic. I'm looking at how they respond after taking a loss this weekend and see if they are actually, still a March question mark, or if it is, they are going to be a good team like some people are suggesting. So that's the team I'm kind of looking at. All right. So Maddie, you've kind of given us your wild opinion on the Penn State game. Connor, any thoughts that you have to add to Texas A&M versus Penn State?
I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to end up looking more like maybe like a 15-point win there at the end kind of in that buffer zone of like 9 to 11 points for the most part. And then they, late game fouls or whatever, they end up squeaking out, or not squeaking out, but they end up winning comfortably there. Maybe not covering. I don't know what the spread is, what the line is on that, but I could see them not covering Texas A&M just because, in these tournaments, it's really hard to cover, I think.
Yeah, no, it is always hard to cover, especially because you got a little bit more fatigue going on. But I can definitely see keeping it close for like 30 minutes and then Texas A&M starting to pull away there. All right, so game 2, we are dealing with, of course, Florida Atlantic, who was everybody's favorite team in the world last March, and Dusty May and the guys there. But they just took a pretty unbelievable loss to Bryant this week. So Al's trying to bounce back with Butler, and Butler's out there trying to prove they're not going to be one of the worst teams in the Big East this season. Who do you guys think A&M ends up facing, and what do you think about that potential matchup? Connor, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Man, this is a hard game to pick because both of these teams are coming off losses that I don't think they should have lost. Like Bryant obviously is an 0-3 team, well now a 1-3 team that they have they just hired their head coach, which is Michigan's temporary coach's son. You know what I mean? Like they're just going through a lot, so they had no reason to lose that game, especially coming off a Final Four appearance. Butler, I picked them to beat Michigan State. They lose by 20. So I thought Butler was playing better ball. I do think Posh Alexander is the best player in this matchup, despite this is not, I do like John L. Davis and I do like Golden, but I think Posh Alexander is probably the best ball handler and scorer in this matchup. I'm going to actually give it to Florida Atlantic, though. I think that the sum of their parts is better than the whole of Butler. So I think they'll squeak out a win, maybe an overtime win, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a really fun game, though.
Okay, that'll be thrilling, actually. But you're right. Florida Atlantic, also another reason I'm kind of leaning Owls here. It's a team that's been together, and that does makes a difference early in the season, especially in this age in the transfer portal when you're bringing players in. And these guys have stayed together through that course of Final Four. They know how to win. So I'm going to take Florida Atlantic here in this game to advance to play A&M. Maddie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go Florida Atlantic against A&M. Obviously, Butler would probably be the better matchup for the Aggies, somebody they would want to see more of.
Yeah.
But, I think when we look at, like we always say, experience wins here. I think Florida Atlantic's going to out-edge Butler for sure.
Okay, so who do you have in that potential matchup, Florida Atlantic or Texas A&M? We'll go around the horn real fast.
I have the Aggies. I think Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford, Henry Coleman, those are 3 awesome players that they can beat, I think, anybody in the nation at this point.
It's fair enough. Maddie?
Yep, I'm going Texas A&M there.
All right. So let's look at the other side of the bracket. Aggies will either face Boise State, VCU, Virginia Tech, which is Buzz's old team, or Iowa State. What team interests you the most on the other side of the bracket?
You want to go first, Maddie?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm sticking with Iowa State there. I think they're going to be kind of a shock for some people. But like Connor said, they're pretty crafty. I think they're going to do well against Texas A&M or do well against the other side of the bracket, and we'll see them play Texas A&M later in the tournament.
Okay, Connor, who do you got?
I'm with Maddie here on this one. Iowa State. I really wanted Keyshawn Gilbert, like on whatever team I root for. I wanted him. I think they're a really good team. They cover. They do whatever they need. Like the good teams win, great teams cover. They cover. They've covered in every game so far. I mean, obviously against mid majors, but still playing really good ball. They've scored more than 85 points in all 3 of their matchups. One of them being 102 points, which is kind of different from the previous Iowa State teams that we've seen the last couple of years. They've been offensively been gross, but really strong defensively. So it's kind of like the opposite of their football team, I guess. So give me Iowa State in this one to match up with Texas A&M.
Yeah, so the team I have of interest here is Boise State. I definitely think that you guys are probably right. Iowa State would be the most likely matchup if the Aggies were to advance into a championship game, but Boise State would be that other team to keep an eye out for. Right now, they are down 3 at time of recording between them and Clemson, so we'll see how that goes. But, Boise State, quality basketball team. Mountain West has been an improving conference every season. In fact, in KenPom last season, they finished higher than the ACC. There are decent teams coming out of the Mountain West, and Boise State is definitely one of them. Couple of players, Max Rice hitting those 3-pointers out there for Boise State. They've got some dudes. Agbo, I believe is how you pronounce that. I haven't watched enough Boise State basketball to admit that I haven't. know that, but game high 19 points, averaging 17 points a night for the Broncos. Good player. I do think that Boise State has the potential to make some noise in this tournament. So if it's not Iowa State, I'm going with Boise State.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how that'll line up there. To keep us a little bit shocked and give another look at a decent team. And I think Texas A&M fans want to play Boise State after last season.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, where do you have the Aggies finishing? What are you guys thinking here?
I think they win it. I think they win it all. I do like Iowa State. I like Boise State. I think if they match up with either of those teams in the championship game, I think they're the best team in this field, and I think that they're going to win it. It's going to be chalk, unfortunately.
Maddie, your thoughts?
Yep, Texas A&M coming out with a win here. Going to be a good tournament, but yeah, I think they're going to get some points added to their net for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to keep it chalk, and here we go. It's unanimous pick time, which has been a downfall for us almost every episode in some game. So I'm going Texas A&M. I think Wade Taylor, Boots Radford, those guys going to be way too much to handle for some of these teams, and I think the backcourt's exceptional. But we also know our record currently this season with all three people pick the same team. So we'll see how that goes. But all right, let's go. Let's rock with it. All right, Maddie, go ahead.
So we've covered, 3 MTEs so far, but there's a lot more tournaments going on than those 3 that we mentioned this week. Which one are you guys most interested in watching that we haven't mentioned so far?
Ooh, you go ahead, David.
Okay, so I've got a full list. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I've got a full list of plenty of basketball that my family will be very upset over the Thanksgiving weekend that I am watching and not talking to them enough about. But directly from the SEC, I've got Florida in the NIT season tip-off. It's not so much about the other guys who are in this field, but I want to see how the Gators how good they actually are. And they have a potential measuring stick matchup against Baylor in this tournament. Auburn played great against Baylor in South Dakota this season. I want to see if the Gators are similar on that level with some of the teams that are going to be in the top half of the SEC. So I'm very interested if we see a Baylor-Florida matchup out there in the NIT tip-off. I think that one could be a lot of fun. Another one I'm just going to throw out there that's not SEC that I think people should keep an eye on is I would be interested in the Cayman Islands Classic. There's some really, really quality mid-majors playing in that tournament, some that are definitely in the top 100 in KenPom. So very interesting matchup, and I think whoever wins that one has the potential to be a great bracket buster come March.
Yeah, I admittedly, I like the Jacksonville Classic because my wife is a UCF alum, so I always root for them as a side team, and I think they're probably are going to win that. They were one of the only power conference teams in that tournament, even though they're projected to place last in the Big 12. I do think UCF's a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. So looking for that one. I also like the NIT season tip-off. We got Baylor, Oregon State, Florida, and Pitt. Florida could win that one. Baylor's playing really good ball. Florida obviously just got a really good confidence booster against FSU. Obviously, FSU's not that great, but anytime you beat your rival by double digits like that, it's always going to feel good. And you could carry that into the next game. But yeah, also, and then the children's Rady Children's Invitational with Iowa, Oklahoma, Seton Hall, and USC. USC is just fun to watch, even though they got upset earlier. They're fun to watch, and I really like Shaheen Holloway and the way he coaches, so that should be good.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent picks. Maddie, who do you have?
I'm definitely planning on tuning into the Emerald Coast Classic. It's technically already started with Alabama getting their opening win over Mercer. But we'll see them in the winners bracket up against Ohio State on Friday and then follow up that with either Oregon or Santa Clara. So I think we'll be able to see a little bit more of that Alabama team we talked about earlier on their hot start and see how much of that actually rings true.
I think that'll be a definite and interesting one that we highlighted earlier for our watch guide at the beginning of the season. All right, guys. Connor, I want to thank you so much for being in here today. Why don't you tell all the good people who love college basketball where they can find your awesome show that I have glad that I've been a part of and got to do a beer recommendation on. Tell them where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Beers and Buckets. We are on Spotify, YouTube, you name it. Apple Podcasts, all the podcasts. We try and do shows on Monday and Friday to kind of do the first half of the week and second half of the weekend season. So check it out. We also are on TikTok at Beers and Buckets Pod. If you're ever on TikTok, we're going to be more active on that soon. But yeah, and then you can follow me personally at Connor J Caldwell. And I talk a lot of ball there and on the Beers and Buckets account when I remember to go on there. So if you don't see me tweeting from the Beers and Buckets one, then I'm probably tweeting from my own. So yeah.
They are hardcore basketball people, just like Maddie and I are. I love their show. It's a lot of fun. And you always get a pretty good beer recommendation, I'd like to think. Some people who
sometimes there's some bad ones. We've gotten some really bad ones. But you got to do it for the content, I guess. So there you go.
For all those people out here who are degenerates who drink beer. So yeah. I love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and follow us anywhere that you get your podcasts. We've got a lot more covered this season, and Maddie and I are here to talk SEC hoops every week. So long for now, and I guess we'll see you later. Yeah, no, I'm dropping dad jokes, Maddie. All right, so see you guys. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.